Good evening, everyone. We are happy and glad to be here. Does anyone know why? Well, you don't have to answer that. We're here to find out more about something that hits every home in every country across the globe, and we have a great speaker this evening that is not only knows about the topic, but has lived the topic. And I don't want to take too much thunder from her, what she has to say. I may be introducing to some, but also presenting to others. She's she's a well-known author, written several books, and looking forward to some other books coming out in 2020. And I'm just excited to hear her present to you something that's very vital. Why I say vital? Vital knowledge. Information is very key, and knowledge is key. They always say, without knowledge, basically you don't know exactly how to fight, combat, or even help and assist anything or any subject matter. So this subject matter is very dear to the next person you'll be hearing. And without further ado, I'm here to call up to the podium Ms. Susan Mintz. Clap it up.
Thank you. Yay. He smells good. My agent also is a saxophonist and smells marvelous.
Oh, thank you.
I don't believe that you choose your message. I've always believed that your message chooses you. Now, whether you want to accept it or not, that of course is your call. But in general, when there's a mandate on your life, you have to follow it, because if God tells you to do it, you do it. I'm going to spend just a few minutes telling you my story, because it is in my book, which was documented over my life when my husband took ill. But I met a young man when I was 11, and I didn't know he was going to be my husband in 10 years, but we were just best friends. One point in 1969, we got drunk, and I got pregnant, and we got married because it was the right thing to do. Again, I'm going to skip over a lot because you can go on my website, susanmintz.com, and all the interviews and all the information, everything you need to know about me is on my website, so I don't spend a lot of time on me because there's so much. But in general, we stayed married. I lost the baby, and we stayed married because we were best friends. He does proceed to tell me 4 months later on our honeymoon that he thinks he might be gay because he's had sexual relationships in college. Now, this was a man who was breathtaking. You would never know it. He had girlfriends everywhere. He was magnificent, and I adored him. And after that, what can I tell you? He gave me a lot of aggravation. We fought. It was horrible. But in between the horrible, it was incredible. It was up and down and chaotic, and it was passion and love and romance. It was everything that you could not want. It was everything that made a relationship exciting. But I was also, I contracted several STDs from him. And don't think we didn't want to get out once in a while, or we didn't want to walk out the door. Don't think I didn't get drunk and get in a car and ride around and hate him and slam doors. And I was the violent one and had all the issues and looked like the crazy person when he was Mr. Dr. Jeffrey Mintz, the perfect white psychologist. But in general, we made it through, but he did give me several STDs, of which I know from, but they were okay. We can deal with STDs. The one we could not deal with was AIDS. And in 1981 on the news, I heard about AIDS, and it was the gay man's disease out of San Francisco, and all I know is I just said, when he came in hysterically, I said to him, after I was also throwing up, because God told me a few things, which I'll tell you right after I approached him. I said, Jeffrey, I'll tell you right now, if you want out, you can get out. If you want to have another partner, you can. I'll never divorce you because I committed to God, and I will never, ever leave you. But I know one thing, we can't have a sexual relationship anymore. He agreed to that. He stayed promiscuous. I went in the bathroom and threw up, and as God told me, he said, stay with this man and love him more than ever before, because he will need you more than ever before. I knew my husband in my heart would one day contract HIV from someone, but it was the way it was. And in 1991, he started getting ill. In 92, he became full-blown pneumonia. They didn't have the medications they have today. They didn't have any of the treatments that they had today. The couple treatments he took, their AZT, didn't work. He was gravely ill, and he ended up dying with hospice help 2 years later in our bed with me with us in my arms, and our marriage after 25 years ended the way it started, in our bed together. I made a commitment not only to my marriage, but I made a commitment to God that from that day on I would speak out and speak boldly, and I would never ever let a day go by when HIV and AIDS was not the mandate on my life and the purpose. I've been a widow 25 years. I have not stopped. I've spoken at every venue, written about it in every venue. My books are all about it. I am ready to go globally to the world and tell them HIV is still here. No, it's not like it was in the 80s and 90s, but it's real, and it's here, and it wants to get in, no matter who you are. I also said to a group of people the other day, I said, as human beings, we judge. It's natural to judge. You can say you don't judge and you're a liar. Instinctively, we will judge. But when I look at HIV, I never judge. And that puts me in this mode. I don't see color, which I never have anyway, but I don't see color. I don't see political agendas. I don't see religious affiliations. I don't see countries or ethnicities. I don't see black, white, rich, poor, thin, I don't see that. I see people who are available to receive a virus that's still here. And if you think it isn't here, you can just go to the CDC or your local health department, and I can promise you, though the statistics might be lower in some cases, but when you start going into the rural, deep rural areas of this country, whether it's Miami, Atlanta, Chicago, New York, LA, Houston, in the urban, the thick urban areas, you are going to find HIV right there. And don't think they're going to go to the health department, because many of these people don't have the resources. They don't know about the paperwork. They don't know how to do it. They're abused. There are people who are into the drugs. Everything that you could imagine, I've seen. And yet I know that HIV is not going away. Though the medications have changed, yes, they're better, but you have got to be proactive. You've got to take control of your life. You've got to take control of your body. And that's the one thing God told me to do, is I had to make decisions that would be good to save my life, because I'd be no good for my husband, who was going to probably get ill, and then I would be no good to other people who might want to know and hear and feel and see the face of what HIV looked like then, and what it certainly 25 years later looks like now. So from 1981 until right now, 40 years later, Susan Lee Mintz will never stop fighting. Fighting for the testing, fighting for your medications, fighting for equality, fighting for you to have exactly what you need, because you are God-given these rights. And you have a right to have the best. And you're not getting it in some of these areas. And it really bothers me, and that's why I stay more focused than ever, and more committed to love, and more committed to my story in hospice with these people, because I know that only by speaking out, and by speaking up, and by never backing down, no matter how rough it gets, and when you think God's not doing anything in your life, God is doing everything in your life. He's just sometimes busy doing some other people's lives, and he can't always get around to you when you want it. But don't you ever stop. So that's pretty much my story. What I have also wanted to share is that I never stop. Even though I want to make a series out of my story, which it would be an incredible series nationwide, globally. As I said, HIV goes from A to Z, from New Zealand to Africa to, I don't know if they have anybody in Iceland who lives in Iceland anyway, but in general, I'm in Antarctica. God forbid it with virus to be frozen there. But in general, I know for a fact that from the time I started, waiting for movies, waiting for this, waiting for that, and yes, it's going to be, I'm prophetically speaking, that HIV and my story is going to be a mega series that will hit this world like never before, because there are 4 things also with HIV, and you can make them the 5 H's. You have HIV, H. You have history. HIV knows your history. Hopes. HIV knows your hopes. Heart. HIV knows your heart, and HIV knows your hurts. So it knows all the H's that you're going to deal with. And if you don't know what HIV stands for, it's the Human Immunology Virus. human immunology. Oh, forget that one. Immunology virus, and it's a retrovirus that causes AIDS. And there are better meds. The media is bothering me terribly because the media doesn't care because it's not newsworthy. Complacency is taking people out. The opium epidemic, again, you hear people talking about the opium epidemic, but one thing they're not talking about is sharing needles. I grew up in a neighborhood, yes, in Houston, that was big. People were druggies, they were sharing needles. Do you think for 1 minute that that's changed? That every time you hear the opium epidemic or the heroin issue, that they're not, when you're high and you're sharing your needles, the blood's in there. Do you really think for 1 minute that people are going to put their condoms on? That people are thinking when they're high that they are going to be okay? Absolutely not. When you're high, and I know I've been high a hell of a lot of times, and I've drunk a lot of the times, and I don't remember a lot of the times, but I know one thing, I have not allowed that virus in me. I have not shared it with anybody. And also to tell you that 1 out of 7 people do not know that they are HIV positive. That's like having 5 bullets in a 6 gun and they got 1 bullet left and you are playing around with it. And I'm telling you right now, get tested. 1 out of 7. Ladies, do not let your guard down. Do not let your guard down, because it's still got to be given to you by a man. That's for sure. I mean, you're not throwing it on trees. The other thing, we'll get into the myths and the facts and a few of that. I just wanted to finish up on my story. And then there's drugs. When you have, I watched another movie the other night, which was incredible. And it said basically, I can't remember it, it said, when you have drugs and money and guns, you are going to have HIV also. Because that's the breeding ground, that's the element. And I'm saying, in a perfect world, my dear friend from the health department, Rob Scott, he says, well, if they can apply for assistance because they can't afford their medications, then they just go health department or they go to, I said, Rob, that's the perfect world for people who know. I'm looking at people who don't know. They might live 2 hours away from a health department or a doctor. They're in these areas where they're being controlled or manipulated and they can't get out to even find out. And that's what I want to get in with the African American woman, why this hurts me so, because I see it. But take it from Susan Lee Mintz, that I've seen every aspect and watched HIV morph from 1981, where it was the gay man's disease in drug addicts and prostitutes. And I watched it go, as prophesied. I said it's going to go all into the white heterosexual community. It sure did. And then I said it's going to go into the African American community. And it did. And then I said seniors are going to contract it. Oh yeah, you better go tell your mother and your grandmother and your aunt who's over 50 that just because she can't have children, and just because she needs to have a man around because she's lonely and she can't go to the movies alone and she needs to go out to dinner, and then he gets all warm and fuzzy with her, and then he pops a little pill, and next thing you know she's having unprotected sex with a man who's got 6 decades of sex tucked away underneath. And he is going to shoot a loaded gun right into her little vagina, and next thing you know, it's going to be over for Granny. And Grandma's going to be, let's say, 55, 60. And all of a sudden, a year later, she comes down with a rash. So she goes to the doctor, and the doctor gives her a cream for her rash. And the doctor says, well, could be stress, your age, your laundry detergent, and the next thing you know, it's not going away, and she develops a cough. And so this goes back to another doctor. The doctor says, well, let's do a chest x-ray just to see. Well, next thing you know, she's got an issue with her lung. And then they said, well, let's just do a test. Have you had unprotected sex recently with anybody? No. He said, you sure? And she says, well, there was this one man, we've had a relationship for a few months, but he's okay because he's my age and he was married once and I know he's fine. Well, sure enough, the test comes back that this nice 55-year-old woman is HIV positive. Now, I think that's kind of a Thanksgiving thing you don't want to talk about. And I think that's a thing at the Bridge Club Or when you're playing with your friends, well, this one's talking about their diabetes. Oh, that's acceptable. This one's saying, I gotta lose 50 pounds. Oh my God, I gotta lose 50 pounds. Well, that's acceptable. This one says, well, I have high blood pressure. That's acceptable. Well, you know what? I'm HIV positive. How's that grab you? You just don't want to get it at any age. So I have all this that I have said about, and I can talk about for hours and hours, but the main thing is you have to take control. I did, and it saved my life, and I continue to take control because I know that the mandate on my life was to love a man till death do us part, and to be an HIV activist and take my story to the world. And if there's one person listening, or 10,000, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere, and I've got something to say. The next thing I want to talk about, I don't even need to stop. I'm one of those who doesn't need to stop. I can talk for hours and talking. Right, Doris? My dear friend Doris is here too. The biggest thing that's bothering me right now is that I wanted to talk about, and I spoke at church. You can go on my Facebook page and see the, I call it the trailer to tonight, when I spoke at my wonderful church, JPPIC. And I also want to thank Pastor Billy Thompson and Prophet Cynthia Thompson for 14 years giving me a platform of HIV to speak about. Whether it was we were testing, whether we did seminars, no matter what we did, they gave me a foundation of to be able to speak about HIV to people. And I thank them so much for this, because they had the foresight, they had the wisdom, and they had the ability to see that this was so needed. So for 14 years here, I have been speaking and being able to talk to my friends. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hello, my darling. Everything's all set up. Chairs are full. They're on. So anyway, the next part of this, what I want to get into, is what's hurt me the most, and I touched on it, is the urban African-American woman. And as I said, I've seen it, when you see it in movies, I can promise you it's more real. That movies touch on it, but unless you go into those rural areas, as I have, and see the people who have nothing, they are controlled by men, they are dominated by people who have got them so manipulated and controlled and everything else that it's absolutely horrible for these women. And I ache for them, because many of them will never get out of that deep, infested, internalized, horrible situation. And then I also didn't touch about the sex trafficking and the sex trade and the slavery issue. You've got little girls who are 13 and 14 years old who are HIV positive because of what's happening. These things, there was somebody that once said, the issues that matter to the people most are the ones that are least addressed. To me, I think that is extremely powerful and profound, because the things to me that are the most important is giving women and men in these rural areas, in these urban areas that are so crowded with drugs and alcohol and the gangs. Get them out into community centers. Get them out where they can have a life. It hurts so badly to see how much poverty there is when there's so much wealth. And the people need to see that there are people out there that can get you the help you need, but they're not seeing it where they need to see it, in the media, on television. And maybe one day, somebody of a high-profile nature, or somebody will say, you know what, I'm HIV positive, and all of a sudden the Twitter feeds will light up, and Entertainment Tonight will go on it for a few hours, and then somebody might even drop dead with AIDS finally. Oh my God, we thought that wasn't even here. You mean AIDS is still around? Yes, it's still around. And I will be even more furious, because they'll cover it for a little while, and then they'll go on to the next subject that's hot. Well, HIV to me is always going to be hot. What I wanted to talk about with this, and again, questions. I want questions, because that opens up so much for me. Questions. Questions. We're letting somebody else in. Questions. Oh, yay! Did you sign in? Well, don't go back out. You're here. You're here. Stay. We'll get you on the outside.
Question, why do you think the attention has dwindled from the awareness of HIV and not talked about as much in coffee shops?
All is because I blame this on complacency and the new medications that are out that can control it. And that's a whole nother seminar when you see U equals U. You can get on some of these medications now that, like PrEP, pre-existing prophylaxis. You can, pre-exposure prophylaxis, PrEP. You take a pill every day, your viral load can become not even, you won't see it, so technically you're not transmissible. So you're gonna see more medications for like that coming out, but PrEP is the big one. It's called pre-exposure prophylaxis. And the other thing is, so medications have come along, which is a blessing. Unfortunately, there's a generation of people, seniors and youth, who have never experienced HIV or AIDS in their life. So therefore the media certainly doesn't care about it. So the two things would be medications to control it, complacency, and the media doesn't touch it. The only people truly talking about it are the LGBTQ community. The CDC will talk about it, but it strictly is back in where it was in the 80s and 90s. It's gone backwards, back strictly into the gay community because nobody else wants to really deal with it. And it's a shame because it is newsworthy. It is impacting hundreds of lives every day across the country, and you can still take a medication that you're fine. You can have intercourse, you can do what you want, but you know what the issue is? You still have to take a pill every day. You can't miss that pill. And you don't realize that these pills are very toxic. They have side effects. So if you're taking other medications for other things, do you think that you better check that you can take that pill? So I'm a believer that I thank God that they're doing so much research and that there are great medications out there now. Can you afford them? Oh, that's a big issue for me. Can you afford them? If you have insurance, that's nice. Suppose you get fired or for some reason you're not there and then you have to apply for the insurance to be able to get it. That's paperwork. That's a time thing. That's a lot of stuff you got to do. Are you going to be able to do all that paperwork and then go without for that length of time? We are not in a perfect world with HIV, people. We hear it, we see it, it looks like it's okay from people who know what they're doing. The majority of, I say, people who don't know what they're doing are going to go without their medications. They're going to cost them a fortune, and therefore, in the end, they're going to get even sicker. So I'm a believer that we are not perfect, the system is not perfect, and the system is broken, especially HIV is a pre-existing condition. Now, that's one thing, you know. Now, they're trying to, our government one day decides that truly they're going to take away pre-existing conditions. Do you realize when you go for your physical, and if it becomes mandatory that your insurance companies want an HIV test because it's so expensive to cost you? Do you think for 1 minute if you're mandatory that you have an HIV test or you have to go for one, that you are going to be in a position to be able to deal with that? It's very challenging. HIV is a pre-existing condition. And if you have to get tested for it, if your company wants, let's say, all right, they test for other drugs. Well, other drugs like smoking or marijuana, oh God, I miss those days. Smoking, marijuana, alcohol. Oh, my life was incredible with this man. You really should get this book. It's got all the things it's the book of Psalms, Proverbs, Esther, Ruth, everybody's in here. But in general, if you think, where was I? Tell me where I was, somebody. I lost track.
You were saying pre-existing.
It's a pre-existing condition. So therefore, if they ever take away and put that in there, then you have to have an HIV test to get life insurance, health insurance, or something else. You have a pre-existing condition, so it's going to make it a hell of a lot harder for you to get what you need. So it's not really very effective for an awful lot of people who aren't educated, who don't have access, who are on drugs, who are alcoholics, who are in those areas where they're being beaten up and abused. And that's where I want to get to what I really wanted to talk about, but you'd never know it, would you? Look at these glasses on here. It says here, this is what I spoke at church about, and I said it's on my Facebook page that you can read this. I'm so easy to get to. My website is clean, it's perfect. You can know about me, you can know about my husband, you can know about everything you want to know. I got interviews, my interviews have interviews. I got so much on there. It's a perfectly wonderful website. It's just great. So that's the other thing I wanted to tell you about was I can be on, I'm on Twitter, though I don't know half of my passwords. Thank God I have somebody who does. Well, I have 2 people that knows everything about everything. But I'm on Twitter, and I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram. I'm everywhere. I'm everywhere you want to meet me, and I got my cards. You can call me, you can email me. I don't care where I go or how big I ever get. You'll never know that you'll always have access to me because you are the only one that matters in this thing. I'm out of the equation. I know what I'm doing. You're the ones that matter with all of this. But I want to read just a little bit of this to you. And listen out there, all of you, I'm live, very live, and I'm very colorful. I just specifically wanted color today because I know, and I had to put my makeup on, and I did everything appropriate because I knew I was going to be live. Okay, here's the video. For over 3 decades, that's 30 years, I've been involved for 40 years, HIV, I'm 73, and if you thought I was 72, you're wrong. I'm 73, and I don't live a day over 72. For 3 decades, HIV infections have impacted the lives of many. I'm dealing with Palm Beach County, this is where I live, but if you're ever going to check out your statistics, or you ever want to know the facts, I'll say right now, do not do Dr. Oz with this. You go to the health department, you go to CDC, you go to the NIH, National Institutes of Health, or you go to the World Health Organization. You do not just Google statistics on HIV. You really want to go to the sites that are specific. So here I'm dealing with Palm Beach County residents where I live. I'm going to repeat myself, which I'm so good at. For over 3 decades, HIV infections have impacted the lives of many Palm Beach County residents, and Black women have been one of the groups most disproportionately impacted. That's what I say, the incidence of HIV is higher in African American women right now in general, and that you can check out and you can fact check that one. There are over 8,500 people living with HIV in Palm Beach County. 36%, that's a third, over a third of those persons are women. However, among the women living with HIV, 76% are Black women. I can stop there. And that's what I want to ask you. Palm Beach County is very diverse. So is Broward, so is Miami, and for 10 years in a row, we have been able to hang a shingle on our door that says we are the epicenter for the highest new infection rates of HIV. Now, what's that tell you? Palm Beach County, Broward, and Miami. Yeah, we have a high incidence of HIV new infections here. And we can discuss absolutely why, and I can certainly tell you what I believe. In fact, all of this is really what I believe, but it's open for discussion, obviously. As I said, if you go to Atlanta or Chicago and Seattle, Houston, Dallas, LA, where you see poverty, where you see real urban situations, where you see gangs and guns and drugs and violence, you are going to see infection rates of HIV that are not being recorded because these people, these women, these poor women don't know how to get out of their situation, number one, don't have access to be able to get out of their situation, and if they could, would they, out of fear? So I've been in these places, I've seen what's going on, and it breaks my heart to see my beautiful sisters and brothers of color, Hispanics and African Americans, become a lost group of people that we have forgotten in so many ways, and it breaks my heart. I'm white, obviously with a great tan. I'm white. I was married to a doctor. Yes, he was promiscuous, but I was, and at a time in the 80s and 90s, I mean, it was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But in general, I'm white, am affluent, well, not so much anymore, but for 30 years I haven't had a job, praise the Lord. But in general, we were white, was a doctor, we had great insurance, we had backup insurance. When he took ill, we had the best doctors, the best care. I still lost him. And that was in the 90s. Perhaps today he'd be alive. And I would love him and I'd still be with him. We probably would have 2 homes, maybe 2 cities, and maybe 2 states, and just get together on weekends or holidays. But my best friend would still be with me. And that's what keeps me going, is I hope tonight he's looking down at me and saying he's proud of taking the pain in my heart and doing something positive with it. And I'll never stop that. I will never stop trying to heal the void that his death left and the deaths of so many people. And if I can prevent millions, and they say if you can save one, I don't want to save one. I want to save millions in every country, in every continent. No, I'm bigger than just Palm Beach County. I want to save the world. And if I can't, at least I can say I gave it a damn good try. The other thing now, I would like some questions, please. Well, that's a silence. Give me one. How about the African American woman? Why do you think, Nikki, that the African American woman is so at risk?
I don't think it's just African American though, but
Speak up,
I
please,
don't
or you're
think-
live, my darling.
we're live. I don't think that it's just African American, but I do believe that some of the reasons why they're so at risk is because there's a shortage of just mentorship or parental figures that, guide these particular women. I do, like you said, some of it is human trafficking, and that's on the rise as well, and they're normally stealing them out of the Black communities. And just, some of it is coming through birth. I mean, it has all kind of reasons, why HIV will pass through women. I know sometimes some husbands are, just like your husband, are promiscuous and it passes down, you know what I mean? And the woman is just trying to be a faithful, loyal woman to her husband. Many different reasons, and it touches everybody really, because, we've all had, well, a lot of people have had, I ain't gonna say we all have, a lot of people have had multiple sex partners, and it could have happened to anybody
Triple
at
digits, oh my
at
God.
any time, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
But let me say this, if you were married
Mm-hmm.
and your husband and you split up for 6 months, and he comes back and says, Nikki, I still love you, I'm sorry, I had it, would you take him back immediately, or would you say, do you have an HIV certificate that says you didn't contract HIV while you were on your sabbatical needing a break?
Well, this is the thing with that. Doesn't it take time for it to show up anyway? So even if you had the virus, doesn't it take about 10 years before, 5 to 10 years before it even shows up?
HIV can lay dormant in your body for 10 years. And until you become symptomatic, or your T cell count drops very low, I think it's below 250 or 300 again, I'm not doing data tonight, and I'm not doing drugs and stuff. But when it gets to a certain point, you're then considered you have AIDS. So yes, if you were to have this man come back in your life, or you're starting a relationship with someone, if you don't both have an HIV certificate that says I'm negative, and you go back 3 months later and you're negative, and you go back 3 months later and you're negative, chances are you're okay. Up to a year. But again, condoms are great. I mean, that's going to piss a few people off. They work. However, they don't always work. They break. Condoms come off. Been there, done that. They don't work. The issue is that you have to stay negative. Now, the other thing people don't understand is they think, well, all right, I'm negative today. A year from now, I haven't any sexual partners, orals, I haven't any sexual partners for the year. So I'm going to go back and get an HIV test. Why? You're negative. You haven't had sex. you haven't had a problem. You don't have to go back. I hear this all the time. I keep getting retested. Well, have you had sexual partners? No. Why? Then don't do it. If you're negative, you're negative. But if you do take on a relationship that's sexual, and people are sexual creatures, there's no doubt about it. We've all been there and done that. Every time you see a pregnant lady, she had sex. I love that aspect. There's a baby in there, I think you had sex. But in general then, I think though that you have to have that certificate that says, now that's where people will want to do it. Men especially, they don't want to go. And you're dealing with cultures, Nikki, that also don't want condoms. All right, many cultures, a man's not going to do it. And that's why you think Indonesia, India, certain cultures, and I'm not saying them, whatever I say, if you want to blast me on Twitter, blast me, I couldn't care. I'm just giving you an opinion, so go nuts on me and make me crazier than I already am. I'm just telling you, cultures don't always follow the rules. That's why a culture is a culture. But for people, I'm saying in general, even my seniors, just don't do it. So yes, it's not just African American, but it hurts me because I'm in a church where they are predominantly African American. And I know that there is a need for, not to deny, that men, African American men, black men are having sex with men. It's high. And I don't understand this down low thing whatsoever, but there are African American men having sex with men. And it's gonna be that way, and if you wanna deny it in the church, you're only hurting yourself. And if women want to deny the fact that they might think their husband's, got gay, that's it. It's up to you, but it's here. And yes, men having sex with men is going to be the way to number one. But I see the need. I see HIV growing, as I said, through drug HIV, sharing needles not being talked about, seniors overlooked, and also going to be mandatory at some point because of the expense involved. Doris, you got a question?
So, for the virus to show once you catch it and you go take a test, how long after you catch it will it show on the test?
I don't understand.
Let's say,
Usually you can become positive. It depends on the viral load of the person. I mean, high viral load, low viral load. But it does take a little while for it to
show on the test?
manifest. That's why, I would say, if you've had unprotected sex, I certainly within a week or two, I would get tested. You don't have to do it immediately, but you do have to get checked.
So after a week or two, it could show that you have HIV?
It might. Again, I have to do my research because I wasn't doing that tonight.
Okay.
I try to stay extremely current on everything that's happening. But as far as I know, my thing is get tested as soon as possible and then 3 months later. But if you think you're at risk, just keep doing it. But it's usually right then, within a week or two. When I was testing people, I knew all this more. Again, with the drugs and with everything, things have changed. But for me, I don't know, I heard maybe it was 24 hours, 48 hours, or 72 hours where it can start taking a hold. The one thing I know about HIV is it doesn't live outside the body. That's a myth. There's a myth. No. When I was growing up and we were in hospitals and I was a dental hygienist, never wore gloves, never wore masks. If you think your first responders are always wearing gloves and masks because it's a crime scene, no, they don't want tainted blood on them. And that's where people also don't think. Let's say there's a couple of car crashes and there's broken bones and there's 20 people who are all over each other with blood. Maybe one of them is positive. That could infect another person just by blood. And that's the thing I want to talk about is the truths, the myths, and the facts. And I'm glad you asked that about the incubation period. It just doesn't live outside. But once it's in, it depends again on the viral load. You might show nothing for 3 months, and that it depends if there's so much involved with that, and that's the medical end, and I don't really get into that. I'm the experiential end. I'm what I've seen, what I've been through, and when I do a seminar on the new medications, or I have to get current again on the incubation periods, or I have to get real with the statistics on stuff, I'll do my research and present it. I'm just telling people, if you think you're at risk, get tested. And if you're positive, get on medications as quick as possible, get into a support group, and don't think you're alone because you're not. And if there's a stigma attached, which is brutal, that's the thing I speak about all the time in groups, is the stigma that still exists 40 years later with HIV. It's horrible, because it's a sexually transmitted disease. The stigma hurts so badly that that's why many groups stay within themselves, is because they can't tell people. They're afraid of their parents finding out. I know of a child recently who not only was gay, he was 16, but he found out that he was HIV positive and he killed himself. That's the issue I deal with, suicide prevention. The issues, and you see this woman standing here who has everything in the world, can do anything she wants, go anywhere. I always say getting remarried 25 years ago would have been much easier than what I'm doing now. However, what I've seen, that I know for a fact, it's real. And I don't like what's happening with it at all, except that it's really good to have the great medication. But I see a lot more the government stepping in, and the pharmaceutical companies stepping in, and your insurance companies stepping in, to make it very, very difficult for people to get what they need, when they need it, and be treated properly and with respect, and not be stigmatized and traumatized, and perhaps kill themselves because they have HIV. I see it, and I've been there. So I know a couple of these issues hit real hard because I've had to attend funerals. I've had to go into real urban areas. I've seen it. I've written about it. But when you've lived the life I've lived, you can't run from it. No, that's just it. Pretty lady, you got a little question for me? No.
No.
But you're taking good notes, aren't you? You're very diligent with that phone. Good girl. Yes, Steve.
I remember they used to say saliva. Does it transmit through saliva?
Not what I'm going to tell you about. A lot of people don't know the facts, again, because it's not being talked about. The 5 modes of transmission that have been the 5 modes of transmission for 40 years since they've heard about it have been, number 1 is blood. Early on in the 70s and 80s, it was the blood transfusion thing, but that's how you got it, in little Ryan White. But it's blood, number 1. That's why I'm so aware with the IV issue, is because any little blood that gets into the syringe goes back into the person, so that's it. Blood. The other thing is semen, which is a blood byproduct. Semen, ejaculation. So, blood, that has to come from a man, obviously. Breast milk. It's in breast milk. If you are HIV positive or have AIDS, yes, it's in breast milk. It's in vaginal secretions, which is a woman. No matter how old you are, you will still have a secretion at a time. And anal secretions. Those are the 5 modes of delivery for this virus. It hasn't changed. And the only thing I heard about a couple weeks ago was that in the last 20 years, as of the last couple weeks, they found a new strain of HIV that they'd never seen before. This virus is very smart. It knows what it's doing, and it wants to get in, and I said that early on. It's a very smart, it doesn't like to live outside your body, but it's very smart getting in. It knows you're vulnerable, it knows you could be compromised, and it knows you're not going to think twice about having a sex encounter with someone that you want. So you have to let it in blood, semen, breast milk, vaginal secretions, anal secretions. No, here we go with the nose. No saliva. You can kiss. This kissing is wonderful. Saliva is fine. You can cry. Tears don't have it. Perspiration doesn't have it. You can swim with somebody in a pool. You're not going to get it. And you're not going to get it from a toilet seat, which people think. Because you can't get STDs from a toilet seat. What you can get from a toilet seat is crabs, because they jump onto your pubic hairs and they find a spot to have a good time. But no STD is gotten from a toilet seat. If you have gotten syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia, or the other wonderful herpes, thank you, I have that too. It gave me everything, but I would not get AIDS. But if you have these, you did not get them from a toilet seat unless you're doing something that I've never heard of. And that would be really kinky, and I don't wanna go there either. But you can get the little creatures that'll jump on you. So no toilet seats either. There's so many facts. My husband and I did everything. We kissed, we hugged, we cried. I ate off his plate. We sipped out of the glass. We did everything. The only thing I would say is that, and why, the other thing that's so important is what I'm doing today is I buy battery operated toothbrushes. God told me this in April. He said he wanted me to, I'm gonna sit down now on Facebook. Thank you very much. I'm gonna sit very gently down here. Almost lost it, fall on the floor, the old lady. God put this in my heart in March. I was at a quiet time after the first of the year, and I'm in bed, and I had a vision, and God said, I want you to purchase battery-operated toothbrushes for HIV positive dental patients in the Palm Beach County Health Department who are on the Ryan White Assistance Plan, which means if they apply, they don't usually have insurance, they might not have the means to get dental care. And if they apply and they qualify, they get extremely good dental care in the dental department in Palm Beach County. And I called my best friend, Rob Scott. Everybody who's with me is my best friend. I have best friends. I mean, everybody I love is my best friend, so don't anybody take it personally that you've been slighted. They're all my best friends. I don't have that many, but the ones I have are the best. So I called him, I said, Rob, this is what God told me to do. Well, of course, Rob's known me for 12 years, so he knew when I said that. He said, well, we gotta do the paperwork. How into paperwork? He put the paperwork through Tallahassee, and we got approved, and we researched to get the lowest price, which is still not low, but I'll get a sponsor after the first of the year. However, as of now, the hygienist gives them out. We get them from Arm & Hammer from the Dollar General store at $6 a piece, but they're good ones. Battery-operated toothbrushes. As of today, we started on August 5th. As of today, I've purchased a little over 300, and by the first of the year, I will have purchased 500 battery-operated toothbrushes. And I will continue to do it. If I can get sponsors, I have a GoFundMe page. That's nice, but I'm not going to use it because God's blessed me with the resources to be able to do this. But it would be nice if an organization or an Arm & Hammer or a Johnson & Johnson or Oral-B or Broxident or Squibb or some other company would like to partner with me and take this on. It would be a marvelous opportunity to get exposure to HIV. A woman who could be their sponsor and spokesperson. I was a dental hygienist for 20 years. If anybody has great teeth, I paid a lot for these, so I certainly could be a great spokesperson for somebody. Oral-B, Squibb, put me on HSN. I could sell you a product and I could smile all the way, say, absolutely, I was a dental hygienist for 20 years. This is the best toothbrush on the market. I swear by it, cross the fingers. In general, I could definitely sell a product if some big company wanted me to back them, and we could buy not only battery-operated toothbrushes, but we could buy water flossers, portable water flossers. And then, is that your stockbroker calling?
It's you.
It's me? Tell them I'm definitely too busy right now signing a huge mega $1 million contract, and I absolutely cannot talk to them. Oh, please. Anyway, so I need to get a company who wants me to be their spokesperson and have them donate toothbrushes. We could take this through the counties, all through upstate, all over everywhere, and everybody could be, any dental patient who applies all over the country could be given a battery-operated toothbrush, a water flosser. We could take oral hygiene to HIV dental patients across the country with the right help. It's necessary, it's needed. In fact, today I woke up and I messenger a wonderful boy, wonderful man, messengered me, and he said, Dear Susan, he said, I want to thank you so much. I've had a couple people now email me and messenger me. They said, thank you so much for that gift. The hygienist gave it to me, and I am so grateful that you thought enough to do this. His wording, I teared up. And I messaged him back, and he messaged me again. And next time I know, we messaged each other a few times. It was more than I messaged anybody. And then next thing you know, he passed it on to a friend. And the friend actually put $25 in my GoFundMe account because of me doing that for one fella. Imagine so far 300 and going on 500, and there'll be 700 because we're going to do it in 2020. I'll keep doing it. It's just part of what I have to do. But to think he passed this on to his friend, and his friend donated $25. So you pass it on to people. Just get off of you and get on to others and find your purpose. No matter how hard it is, you go with it. There's a few, any more questions? Can I have a couple more? Oh, yes! Oh, what's your name?
Charday.
Charlene?
Charday.
Charday. Ooh, how exotic. Why did you come here and how did you hear about this?
I came because I was invited.
Who invited you? Oh, are you related?
Stepdad.
He's what?
Stepdad.
Oh.
So, good question. Why do they need to use different toothbrushes? What's like is it different for
All right, getting into the medical end of it right now is very hard for me to deal with, but unless, let's say, I would not suggest that you share the toothbrushes because of the intimacy of the mouth, the blood vessels that are there, and if you have gum disease, periodontal disease, sores of any kind, a cold sore, or you have any of these, let's say an abscess, or you have bleeding gums, then yes, you are allowing, again, potential virus. Even though, again, on a toothbrush, it's living outside, so it's not going to do any harm. But I would say just because, I don't think it's really all that nice to share somebody's toothbrush. If you're going to stay with somebody, bring your own, or have an extra one in the drawer. But in general, HIV will not live outside the body, but for a minute,
and the regular toothbrushes?
the regular toothbrush, I still use a regular toothbrush,
Okay.
but
So,
I have a mostly crowns in my mouth.
so you just donate the electric
I just-
toothbrushes
yeah.
because it's like their better version of toothbrushes, right?
Well, a lot of reasons. When you deal with HIV, some of the people have neuropathy, all right? Some of them might have tremors.
Oh.
My husband was too weak to brush his teeth. I had to brush his teeth for him. So not only is it a nice thing to give somebody, but it's also a way to tell them that you care. And where were we going with that one statement? Because I was on it and I got sidetracked. I
No,
messed myself up.
I was just wondering if you just donate the electric toothbrushes not specifically because they're HIV, but it's because it's a better toothbrush and they have.
I did it because I had the need, as a hygienist, I saw the need for good oral health.
Yeah.
And my campaign is called Total Health Begins with Oral Health. And for me, HIV, you have to be meticulous with your oral health. Because if you cannot masticate properly, you get loose teeth, periodontal disease, you won't be able to get the nutrients into your body. And when your immune system is compromised, you need all the help you can get. So to me, it was an effortless way that you can hold a brush if you have a little neuropathy. And the other thing I said is this could go everywhere in the country with every condition. This could be for arthritis, Parkinson's, people who've lost fingers. I had arthritis in my thumbs, and when they don't want to work, you try holding something with 4 fingers. Impossible. I mean, it took me hours to learn how to hold a glass until the cortisone shots kicked in. So I just saw a huge need being a hygienist, and I saw a huge need with other conditions. But with HIV, I saw that we needed to have just a way that if you're too weak, you don't have to stand over a sink and hold a brush. If you have other conditions, you have something, or somebody can brush for you. I mean, it was just, God told me to do it.
Yeah.
And I saw the need. And I stick with HIV, even though I'd love to see something like this done across the country for every condition. There's not one disease out there, not one medical condition that you couldn't benefit somebody with a battery-operated toothbrush or a water flosser, because oral health is important, and total health begins with oral health. That was a great question, Charday. Yeah, you got a beautiful smile. Keep it.
Thank you.
So I'm not saying a manual, but they will promote that an electric toothbrush is better than a manual. I just think good oral hygiene is good oral hygiene. And I think flossing is also the most important thing you can do. Flossing is extremely important. But you have to be aware that gum disease is here and it's real. And as you get older, your teeth, even for seniors, one of the reasons a lot of people don't smile is they're ashamed of their teeth.
They lose their teeth.
And as they get older, your teeth get over, or from drinking coffee or wine or chocolate, teeth stain. And when you're self-conscious about your smile, you don't smile. Consequently, I've been bleaching for decades, and I have a lot of crowns, because if I'm in front of the camera, I've got to have great looking teeth. And if I'm going to promote oral health, I better look like I have it.
Yeah.
So that's a big, your appearance to me is everything. If you're selling a product, you got to look like you could sell it. If not, what are you doing it for? So,
Sure.
total health begins with oral health. One more question, then I got to get into a few other subjects. This is very intense tonight. This is a lot of information. And I haven't even touched the surface on most of the things. Tell me, one more question, Dee. What would your daughter know? Or what would Josh want to know? What would one of your children want to know?
What are some tips for caregivers of HIV AIDS patients?
You have to have a lot of patience. Caregiving for anybody who's ill. It's rough, because there is nothing going to be normal. You live in the instability, and caregiving is, I think you also have to be aware of, many times the caregiver needs more care than the patient. And that's where hospice came in to help me. And when I wrote my book, this one, and I held their hands with a hospice heart, because I got involved with hospice a year later after my husband's death in '94. I took a year off, and I got involved with hospice because they helped me so much. I couldn't have done it without it. He passed. Do it. Again, it would depend on the condition. Alzheimer's is very accepted now. Parkinson's is accepted. Cancer is accepted. Caregiving for HIV is someone who's AIDS and who's gravely ill. That's a whole other protocol. And you really are dealing with a virus that the interesting thing is that I never thought that I would get it. So I never put a glove on. I never had a mask on. I mean, I had my hands everywhere doing what I needed to do. I never worried. But I was also very fortunate. I would suggest if you're taking care of someone, especially changing IVs, I had to change IVs, anything that really involves possible blood contact, I would suggest that you do wear your gloves and you take all your precautions. But caring for someone who's gravely ill with HIV is very challenging. I mean, Jeremy, he was constantly throwing up. He lost control of his bowels and his bladder. It was rough. But that's not the way it has to be today. The virus still exists, but you have great medications to help control it and take care of it. But don't get complacent and let your guard down, because these medications have side effects also. And that's what I don't like, is depending on a pill. Don't depend on a pill. Just take control and be smart. As you get older, the two things that I think have helped me is wisdom, hopefully, and a sense of humor. As you get older, wisdom and a sense of humor. And that's helped a lot. So that was a good question. Yes, Sade?
Last question. So you said that he gave you everything else except HIV.
Mm-hmm.
How did you handle that going throughout your life, especially after he passed, or you just said to yourself, well, this is my husband, I'm gonna, not have sex with him, but not have sex with anyone. Mm-hmm.
I don't mind whatever calling it right now, I'm not dealing with it. But anyway, I had a little sore. I went to my doctor, this was decades ago. And I said, I have a little sore here on my lip. She says, you have genital herpes. Well, I didn't even know what that was. She says, it's a sexually transmitted disease. And I said, well, the only one who had sex with my husband. That was one of the indicators when he had partners. There was always a third partner in our bed. It was, I don't mean literally.
Yeah.
Not literally, but HIV was always a possibility in our bed. And then I had syphilis, and I had gonorrhea, and I had chlamydia, which you can pass back and forth to each other. None of these will kill you. That's why my guard was up when I heard about AIDS, because that was a whole different agenda. And so, how I dealt with it, terribly at times. I mean, my marriage is so, the roller coaster I was on, but in between the horrible parts of the fighting, between the love, the passion, the friendship, the travel, the food, the fun, the laughter, I had the life. I would do it all over. I'd do it all over again. If you were here, I'd be with them. But that's just not the way it is. But I am witness to the fact that I take an antiviral called Zovirax every day, 400 milligrams, and it's suppressed. I don't break out with any lesions. I haven't had a sexual relationship I've been a widow 25 years, so it's been 15 plus years I haven't. I don't want to. I don't want to get married. I don't want a man in my life. I don't want a zip code that I have to deal with. I don't want plants, a dog. I don't want anything that requires care other than me making $1 million series and going forward to the world talking about this. So I don't want anything that requires care other than myself and my friends and the basics. But no, I handled my life at times terribly. I was an angry, hostile child. I was an angry, rude. I would go for your juggler in a heartbeat. And Jeffrey, there was a psychologist who was gay, and he was the one on the side doing everything. But I was the one who they thought was nuts, the way I dressed, the way I talked. And I would just look for your soft spot. In 30 seconds, I'd find it, and I'd go right for it. And I'd laugh all the time, thinking, I got you, didn't I? I was terrible. I was terrible. There's a part of it still is, but it's much better. But in general, we had our terrible times. We had our incredible times. And all of it was documented. The reason Committed to Love is such a powerful book is that each chapter is almost a cliffhanger. It's got 24 chapters. Each chapter is a cliffhanger because I documented from the time he took ill and was in the hospital. I documented. Here he was, so gravely ill. 105 fever, spiking, shaking, bowels he had moved. And there's all these people wrapped up like the men from Glad, literally. Then they had the orange suits on. They were all. It was contaminated. They didn't know in 1990, in the 1980s and 90s that much. So it was very horrible to see him look like that. Here was this immaculate, gorgeous man, thin, and being treated like he was a leper. And I went in a chair near the phone, and there was a little pad of paper and a pencil. And I wrote, Dear Jeffrey, we start our new life today. And I documented every single day for over 2 years, everything that happened morning, noon, and night. That's why this book, years later, was able to be written, because I had already 15 journals documented with everything I had we dealt with until the day he passed. So I always say as a writer, write. As a speaker, speak and journal. I called a diary. I grew up, youth had a diary. Get your diary and remember today. Even if you write one thing down, remember it, because you won't remember it. I remembered everything for over 2 years, and my whole life got enmeshed in that. Because while I was writing about what was happening on that Tuesday, I was writing about what I might have experienced 10 years earlier. So my whole life got put into a book through 2 years. And then the hospice being there, Why was I able to talk to people who were going through what they were going through, the patients or the nurses or people I met in the airport who had the little hospice heart? Because I could relate to everybody I saw there, because I've been where you are. And sometimes all you needed was to say is, you're gonna be okay. You're never gonna be over it for real. Nobody can fix that void in there. But you're gonna be okay. Day by day, you'll find another reason to go on. So my stories are sad in many ways, but they're of hope, and they're of faith, and they're positive. In fact, my dear friend, like I mentioned, Andrea Rackley, my nurse friend, she's so great. The other day we were talking, and she said, I couldn't get through chapter 4. And there's 24 chapters in my book. She said, I couldn't get through chapter 4. I had to put it down. She went, oh, Susan, how did you do it? Well, how do you give birth to 5 kids? I've never known that either. I mean, you just do what you do. So as far as I'm concerned, I can't relate to you. I can't relate to a lot of things. I can only relate to me.
So no kids for you?
Nope, I lost the baby. We got pregnant. I mean, it was the 60s. I was really promiscuous, and I was gorgeous. You can go on my Facebook page. I was gorgeous. I mean, I'm pretty good at it, but in general, I was a knockout. I didn't appreciate how good I looked. I was really gorgeous, hot, sexy, built for endurance, stamina, and then, of course, I was a bodybuilder, and I had red hair, and I was everywhere. The flip side is, where was I again? And it's not because I'm old, I'm just get all these, I just love to talk about this stuff because it's real. So that's what happens, it just gets me off track. Kids, oh, so Jeffrey and my parents were out of town. We were just best friends. He'd come over after college, high school, we'd make out. We were just best friends. We were only 2 Jewish kids who turned out to flunk chemistry 3 times, and if we didn't pass, we would never have graduated. But we used to make out all the time. I mean, it was wonderful. It was a little town, we were friends. But then one night, my parents had gone out of town, it was snowing. It was in December. And my parents had gone out of town. And he and I were out to dinner, and it was snowing, it was really bad. I said, stay over. You know, we got out of parents' bed, and we had a Russian drink called Shlibovitz. It's called Shlibovitz, and it's Russian, and boy, it's good. So we were doing shots, and next thing I know, I saw this gorgeous, handsome man, his ears turned beet red. And I remember the next thing I know, we woke up, we were on the floor naked in the morning. Well, I missed a period, and 6 weeks later, I was pregnant. And it was the right thing to do. You didn't have abortions, you didn't have any. This was 1969. Small town. His parents had the same gynecologist my parents had. I had the same gynecologist everybody had. I mean, that's just the way it was. So I was pregnant. We got married. Went back to work at the VA hospital. He went back to get his master's in Albany at Albany State and with emotionally disturbed children. He married one who was emotionally disturbed. And then next thing you know, a week later, I'm at the VA hospital and I feel contractions. And my father picked me up and brought me to the doctor. And the doctor said that I had to get in bed, that I was already having contractions. And I said, I can't get in bed. I said, I'm giving my husband a birthday party tonight. And I did. I gave him a birthday party. We had friends over in a little studio apartment. And right there, about 3 o'clock in the morning, I just hemorrhaged and aborted in the bathroom. And we called the gynecologist and they rushed me over to the hospital. And I did a D&C. And on Monday I was back to the VA hospital working and nobody ever knew I was pregnant. Except my parents and his parents and the rabbi. And 4 months later, we went on our honeymoon to Spain and that's when he tells me he thinks he's gay. And then a month after that, we had our reception at the Holiday Inn in Troy, New York, and everybody kept looking at my stomach because, you know, I was the town slut, and therefore I slept with everybody, it didn't matter, and I was sleeping with every RBI boy, and I was horrible, I was not safe at all. And next thing you know, you're all looking down at my stomach, there's Susan Mintz and Jeffrey Mintz, how could that have happened, you know? Honey, it's up here, I'm not pregnant, you know, even then I'd look at them and they'd look at my stomach and they expect me to be pregnant. No! I'm not. We're in love, we're best friends, we got married, okay? I mean, I was so bold and awful. And that's the story of what happened. We stayed married, he ended up still being who he was. I couldn't change him. I wanted to leave many times, and it was horrible. But it was the greatest time of my life. The happiest I was when I was with that man. I miss him every day, and I'd go back and do it again every day. And I have no regrets. I loved him, I still do, and the only thing that keeps me going is the fact that I have a purpose. And my purpose is to tell my story to the world, to help others, to motivate others, to inform others, and to hopefully help other men and women to know that your life is precious, you have a call on it, you have a purpose, and when you find it, no matter what happens, no matter who tries to stop you, if God tells you to do it, in here and talk to anybody and say, you want to know about HIV and love? Call Susan Lee Mintz. Don't text me. If you're serious, you make me a call. You talk to my agent. I have an agent now. He's a saxophonist. Julian Ray, saxophonist to the stars. My agent now. And I have a lady who handles my website here too, Nikki Garcia. That website's going to be absolutely breathtaking when she finishes tweaking it a little bit. But it's still up now. SusanMintz.com. I'm everywhere. Remember, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and my website. And the books are available online, Barnes & Noble and Amazon. Of course, you can get them through me autographed if you so choose want to come to Boca and come to me, but I'm just not going out of my way at the moment for that. However, I am pleased that I was able to do this. I hope you all got something out of it. Most of you know me. Most of you probably sometimes don't wish you knew me. I leave terrible texts. They're way too long, as you know. However, I do text now, and that's new for me. But I love you all dearly, and I'm so glad you could come. And I'm planning on continuing on this ministry and this mission until the good Lord takes me. Because there's so many people in this world who need to know that committed to love is real. I shall say, I'm not loud anymore.
Thank you. Woo!
Yeah!